Hello and glad to see you. I'm Yulia Kosarenko and this is a special video. Today I want to pay a debt to my subscribers. Let me explain. 2 years ago, when COVID pandemic just started, I decided to run a series of free webinars on business analysis. To my surprise, the webinars were quite popular. I ran quite a few of them and I met a lot of business analysts around the world. Some of them started to tell me, you should put your recordings on YouTube. I didn't have any experience then, and frankly, I didn't even have a proper microphone for professional recordings, so the audio of my recordings wasn't that great. But I decided to give it a go, and to my surprise, those videos started to get views, and one of them, called Business Analysis Tools and Techniques, quickly amassed thousands of views. Today, I want to rectify those audio issues and record a new and updated version of my webinar, Business Analysis Tools and Techniques. I hope you will enjoy it and stay my friend on this YT channel. So today's topic is Business Analysis Tools and Techniques. I'm Yulia Kosarenko, author of the book Business Analyst, a Profession and a Mindset, and you can always find me on my website why-change.com or on this YouTube channel. Here is what we will talk about today. I will do an overview of business analysis techniques and then we will talk about a few of them. These are my favorite. I believe that every business analyst needs to be really proficient with them, and I hope you will use it more after watching this video. We will talk about asking questions, immersion, artifact analysis, root cause analysis, process analysis, and business modeling. And we will wrap up by reviewing some of the tools for capturing and sharing requirements. So why do we need to talk about tools and techniques? Business analysts use those tools and techniques to perform their daily job. They are business analysis activities. We need to use a variety of techniques to deliver what we are supposed to deliver. And what is that? Business analysts train to apply those business analysis tools and techniques to help identify what is required to solve business problems. And they always have to keep that goal in mind, achieving a certain business objective. And that's where we apply tools and techniques to help us with business analysis process, to help us understand the problem, determine business requirements, and then make sure that those requirements get implemented. What are those business activities I just mentioned? Business analysts do a lot. And there are a lot of core activities which are related to us doing our daily jobs. And we can just review a few of them quickly. You can see this is a long list already. But this is all of the things that we actually do. We interview and shadow business experts to ask them questions and collect more information. We search for information independently, research, investigate. We facilitate requirements workshops and many other types of meetings. We need to analyze processes and then capture them using diagrams and other means. We learn about business. We create business models. We analyze scenarios, data reports, analytics. We then start to capture the information that we've gathered, collected, and researched. We will capture assumptions and constraints and business requirements. We may be creating screen mock-ups, storyboards, helping to design prototypes. We do a lot of explaining. We explain technical details to business and business information to technology folks so that they understand business process and business needs. We review things. For example, we may review solution design to make sure that it satisfies requirements that we've collected. We may be reviewing test scenarios and test cases. So lots and lots of those core activities that every business analyst is going to be involved in. In addition to that, of course, there are some non-core activities where a business analyst, just like any other team member, participates in and contributes to, and sometimes will lead. We may be participating in project planning or contributing to that, contributing to risk analysis, especially when we define requirements-related risks. We may be contributing to estimating effort, estimating user stories, and doing data analysis, especially as we are investigating root cause of the problems. We often participate in testing. We may be supporting it or even leading. Business analysts often lead or coordinate business acceptance testing. Of course, analysts are usually good facilitators, or need to be, so they often run or help run in other project meetings, not just requirements related. And they do lots of training and communication, so creating documentations, presentation, explaining, training end users, and so on. So lots and lots of skills that you need to do this. Today, though, our focus is going to be on those core skills, on what do you need to do to basically execute business analysis activities on the project or for your product development. And to do that, we will actually look at what is a business analysis process like? What types of activities you might need to do at different stages? So this is one of the ways to look at business analysis process. You can see that there is a certain sequence of phases. Now, of course, it's not always going to be linear. We might be iterating through these phases multiple times, but we still need to do discovery to discover and understand the business problem better. We need to make some assumptions and capture them to help us start the analysis. Then there are certain analysis activities to understand business process in detail, to dig to that root cause, to capture the problem before we can synthesize the future state, synthesize requirements for where we want to go. What is that future solution that will help us solve our problem? And as we are doing it, we need to validate the requirements, validate our understanding of the problem all the time. And we need to prioritize requirements or user stories, because of course not everything can be done at once. And as we're going through this process, we're constantly packaging it. Packaging means organizing, classifying, tracking, cross-referencing, packaging it up in such a way that you can find requirements, cross-reference them, share them, and easily find them. So all of these are different phases in our iterative business analysis process. And this is where we will focus today on some of these activities. In particular, we will focus on discovery activities, analysis activities, and packaging, because there's only so much we can do in one webinar. So let's talk about discovery. Discovery is trying to understand what's going on, what is happening, what's the context, where am I? And this discovery and understanding of the current state of the problem you are asked to help solve starts with questions. We ask questions, we seek information, we ask those stakeholders to share information with us. And here I want to just quote this proverb that I think is very appropriate, especially for business analysis profession. He who asks a question is a fool for 5 minutes. He who doesn't ask a question remains a fool forever. And why is this appropriate? Because when we ask questions, especially during discovery process, we help understand current state better. We help everyone to figure out what are the gaps, what's going on, what are the different aspects of the problem, what are all potential impacts, who is involved, what are they doing. If we don't ask enough questions, we may be missing some vital information. We may miss something that turns out to be important. And it is our job as business analysts to ask questions. We may not know the answers, but part of the value of what we do is in asking those good questions. Okay? So we will talk about how to do that, how to ask questions during the discovery phase. And there are a few tips I have for you today about asking questions, asking exploratory questions, open-ended questions, avoiding leading questions, and I'll show you some examples. Asking one question at a time, and very, very importantly, posing your key questions to more than one person. Just think about it. You may have different people, different perspectives. Someone may think it's their pain point or it's their problem, it's their process, but another stakeholder or another department may have another perspective. So for you as a business analyst to have this well-rounded understanding of the problem, you should try and ask questions of different people, especially during the discovery phase, and try to understand different perspectives. And finally, don't be afraid to ask questions, okay? It's sometimes a little scary, a little apprehensive, but If we don't ask questions, then maybe nobody else will, and what will happen is we may have some gaps on the project. So let's just dive in now. What do I mean by exploratory questions? We explore the context, we explore our understanding of business problem. We are exploring what is happening, what is the environment in which my group works or my business process exists, or what is this environment for my problem. And to do that, think about it like this cloud of various information that you haven't discovered yet, but you can help yourself by thinking of it from multiple directions. First of all, think about what are the drivers and business rules that impact my business process or problem. Business drivers could be, what are the goals and objectives that are important right now? What is the strategic direction of the company that may be relevant to the problem? Maybe what are the different government regulations that exist, or licensing considerations, or what is going on in the industry that may be impacting this particular aspect of business. So these are all big and often external things that have an impact and have relevance. And when we talk about business rules, think about whether the company has certain policies or guidelines or the rules for handling a certain process or for managing that part of the business, because those business rules probably don't change as frequently, and you probably need to know them because they will define some of those requirements as well. So that's business rules and drivers. On the other hand, we have business impacts. Whatever is the problem that you're resolving, and let's just pick one. For example, you don't have enough inventory at peak times when you receive new orders, you can't fulfill them. Thinking about business impacts of this problem, maybe there is reputational impacts, customer impacts, maybe your supplier contracts, and so on. So if you were to solve this problem, or if you were to change this process, what else are you going to impact? There are certain upstream processes and downstream processes always. Whenever we are dealing with part of the business, say in our case, order fulfillment, there are certain upstream processes that may happen before. For example, looking for new customers, registering them, helping them to populate the orders, or collecting customer orders, checking your inventory, ordering the inventory from your suppliers. All of this happens before or upstream. Downstream, you may have your delivery, you may have your warranty, you may have an exchange process or a customer service. So again, whenever you solve for a part of the business, think about what happens before and what happens after. And that really helps you to come up with ideas for those exploratory questions. Next, let's just focus on how do you ask those exploratory questions. And you, at this stage, you want to be very open-ended. What does it mean? Open-ended means that you are not locking your respondent into a certain answer. You are not narrowing down their choices for them. You are trying to give them lots of freedom in how to respond by the means of asking questions in a very non-threatening and non-leading way. So you're just asking them to tell you. And the advantage of open-ended questions is that you may discover more than you even know to ask about. Because at the very beginning, we may know very little, right? We are just searching in the dark. We're fishing for information. We don't know what to ask about. Open-ended questions will help us gather that information faster, and you give the freedom to someone else to tell you that story. So here are some of the ways you can start your open-ended questions. Tell me more about. Please describe. What if? Explain how this works. What are the typical issues? What happens when? What is the worst thing that might happen? So you always are trying just to ask them to tell you about how something works without really pointing them to a certain answer. A rule of thumb is that open-ended questions cannot have a yes or no answer. That's a closed question, right? So related to that is avoiding leading questions. Leading questions are those where you kind of assume you know the answer, or you think you know the answer, and you're just looking for confirmation. As an example, you can say, well, in this case, you would do 1, 2, and 3, right? If your customer didn't pay for previous order, you're just gonna cancel, or I guess decline their next order, right? That means you think you already know. And in that case, you are not always guaranteed to have a full and honest answer. What you can do instead is you can say, tell me what you would do in this case. For example, if the customer is placing a new order and they're late paying for previous order, what would you do? What do you normally do? Or what options do you have? And this way, you're really not leading anyone to any particular answer. Sometimes you think you have the information, but you may be mistaken, or you may know only about one of the scenarios, and maybe there is more than one scenario. So leading questions are a little bit dangerous, and during the discovery, just try not to do it. And also you may appear and know it all, and it may annoy some people. So just seek information instead and invite them to tell you. Another example is asking one question at a time. And hopefully you never do that, but sometimes I've seen people asking this very complicated question that consists of multiple parts. So, do you allow to cancel the order after the payment has been received and the food preparation started, and apply the payment to a different order instead of sending customer a refund? Nobody can really answer all parts of this question just by listening to it, and if they say yes, you may feel happy that you know the answer and you can move on, but in reality that's not a real answer, because you can't just follow the question. It's very hard, and you may be missing some logical links. This is really 4 or 5 questions in one, and you really need to break them down. You may first ask, tell me what's the process of canceling orders, or when is the customer allowed to cancel the order? And then maybe ask more questions. Is it possible to cancel the order after the payment has been received? Or would you allow the customer to cancel their order after food preparation started? And what happens if food preparation started and customer suddenly wants to cancel their order? And then perhaps, what do you do with payments received if the order is canceled? So there is so many questions in this. Ask them separately. Otherwise, even if someone says yes, you don't really have the answer. Okay. All right, what are we going to talk about next? So we are asking these questions in different circumstances, maybe in interviews, maybe in workshop meetings, and maybe during an immersion process, right? So what is immersion? Immersion is immersion into a business process with someone who is doing it day to day, someone who works in the field, on the floor, as they say. You would be observing and job shadowing that person and trying to understand how that process works in real life. So what I like to say is immersion is observing what people actually do rather than what they say they do or what their managers think they do. Because the reality is that real processes deviate from documentation. Even if you have standard operating procedures or process flows, don't think that you understand the whole process, because there may be workarounds and exceptions, and in the field the process may happen differently, and you really want to go and observe it. Of course, there are also undocumented processes, something that we've always done this way, and it's especially important to just come and observe it and collect information and gather it all in. Now, I do have a whole video on immersion, and I'll share the link with you in the description. But for today, just want to briefly touch on some immersion best practices. So if you have an agreement with someone to meet with them and spend a day or two with them observing what they do and collecting information for business analysis purposes, keep in mind that it's very important for you to be respectful of them, of their time, and of their expertise. You are there with very apprentice type set of mind, with humility. You are coming to learn. You're not coming to criticize or to make any comments. You are more there to understand and to gather information. You're going to them as an expert. So don't judge what they do. You probably don't know enough yet to make any judgments or any assessments. You are instead learning and listening and observing and absorbing. So this is very important. Observe, absorb, ask questions, try to understand. No showcasing. You're not there to immediately start to solve their problems for them and tell them, hey, let me show you how to use this better. Or hey, have you ever tried this and that? It's a little too early for all that yet during the immersion. This is the time where you are learning from them, and all that solutioning will come later. One of the most important goals of the immersion is exploring exceptions and workarounds. This is what often isn't documented, and sometimes even the managers don't necessarily know what hoops do their staff need to go through to get things done. So you may see yellow sticky notes and quick printouts, or just word of mouth explanation of how certain steps are done in real life, for various reasons. Maybe there is no data, maybe the system is too slow, maybe when they are in a rush, they know a shortcut. So you have to really understand those workarounds and exceptions, because whatever solution eventually will need to be designed will need to come up with better ways to solve for these exceptions and for these shortcuts. Try to be helpful. Sometimes you may be able to do a little bit of the job, which has two good benefits. First of all, you're learning faster by doing. Secondly, you may be helping the expert you're observing and not slow them down as much. Because when we're doing immersion with someone, we usually slow them down because we ask questions, we ask for printouts, we take screenshots, right? We are taking their time. We will be slowing them down, but when you're helping them here and there, you may minimize the slowdown. And no going behind someone's back. Again, you are there to learn, not to criticize. If you saw something that they are not doing not by the book and they were kind enough to explain it to you, it doesn't mean you run to the manager and tell them, oh my God, have you seen what they're doing? That's not what it's for. Think about a mentality of investigative journalist. You don't sell out your sources. Instead, you learn from them and you try to discover what and why. And this is what you do here. And finally, prepare a plan B. What do I mean by this is not all people in operations know what business analysts do or will understand intuitively what is this immersion all about. They may be a little bit apprehensive. You have to help prepare them and explain and help them relax, and you want to encourage them to do what they normally do. But if they get stuck a little bit, you have to be prepared with certain open-ended questions to help kickstart this whole thing. Now, to learn more about Plan B and get more tips on immersion in general, go and check out my video called Immersion. I'll post the link in the video description here and you can learn more about it. We will though move on to the next technique, artifact analysis, which we can also call due diligence. Now it looks like a stack of papers and books, and maybe it looks boring to you, but business analysts need to do their due diligence, okay? We don't learn everything just by asking questions. We need to do our own research and come prepared to those meetings. And again, if certain information is already documented, maybe in a process manual or in a deck or in a user training, research it. Get as much as possible from there and then complement it by asking questions. And you may actually learn something from this artifact analysis that you may not learn as easily from asking questions. And let's figure out why. So the goals of this artifact analysis that we are doing at the beginning is to do our own research, to do our own due diligence, to be better prepared, to assess existing evidence. If you're solving a problem, how do we know about the problem? What do we know about the problem? What data we have? You want to have the facts at hand, and you want to learn the terminology, or at least try as much as possible to use correct terminology because it helps your communication. You want to collect examples and artifacts to understand current state. For example, if there is a discussion about some reports being inaccurate, well, collect examples of those reports and it was highlights, or collect different customer communication if you want to research customer complaints. You want to discover, and again, this one is one of the most crucial, discover key information that may be taken for granted. Sometimes our stakeholders assume we know things because they know them, and to them it sounds like everybody should know this, but that's because they're doing their job. It's what they do. You as business analysts may not know that, but they just don't realize it, so they don't even share it with you. And this is how we sometimes miss information, not because of any bad intentions, just because that information is already taken for granted by your stakeholders. Here are some examples of the artifacts you may want to analyze. Glossaries of terms. This is where your terminology and business words will come in. Process flows that may have been captured by other business analysts during previous project, for example. Process outputs. Say you're investigating an existing process, for example, order fulfillment. What are the different outputs? Reports, correspondence, printouts, maybe some screens that show you information. Existing business requirements. Again, if you're investigating an existing system, it has been developed or modified or configured before, where the documented requirements, they may contain valuable knowledge for you that you should know and then reuse. What about design specs? Again, if you need to understand better how the system behaves, what business rules are built in, what is that logic that's driving certain steps of the process, go and check the design specs, because it may actually surprise you. It may tell you something that no business expert will tell you. Data dictionaries. Anytime you need to investigate data to understand certain data points, ask whether there is a data dictionary. Of course, sometimes it doesn't exist, but if it does, that's another valuable artifact for you. Standard operating procedures. Many companies that existed for a while, for a couple of decades, would have those big books of standard operating procedures. Some companies are very diligent about keeping them updated. So definitely check and ask, because this may be your main source of information about current business processes and rules. Training manuals, any manuals for equipment, for systems, onboarding manuals for new employees, again, can give you that initial information for your discovery. And presentations, decks, status reports, anything else that summarizes information, maybe decks that have been done during the project initiation, during feasibility studies, or any strategic presentations that help you understand business goals. All of that can prove valuable. So definitely collect and scan and review to be prepared and to do your due diligence. RACI charts, just to add to that, help you by understanding who is who from the stakeholders, and that can help you determine who to interview next, who to ask questions next. Finally, we are getting to analysis activities, and here I want to start with root cause analysis. Root cause analysis, again, is crucial because before we go about solving a problem, we need to make sure we understand what problem we are solving. What is it that we need solution for? And this quote is attributed to Albert Einstein, who said, "If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solution." And what it tells us is, it reminds us that understanding the problem is already half of the solution, right? Otherwise, you're going to be solving for something else. The roots for a certain business issue can go very deep, and sometimes we need to go and discover those roots, otherwise we would not be able to solve. So as business analysts, we always need to think back to cause versus effect, and we need to remind ourselves and remind everyone else to distinguish between cause and effect. Effect is a pain point. Effect means something is bothering you, something is not right. It's a visible problem. It's an effect of some underlying cause. And pain points is something we can mitigate or reduce. So often when you first start talking about a certain initiative with a stakeholder, they think about business problem, but they will tell you about their pain points. What is not working? What is annoying? What is too slow? What is it that customers or employees are complaining about? First, think about it as a pain point and assume that you don't know the root cause yet, because root cause often stays hidden. It could be something behind the scenes that causing these effects or these issues. It could be underlying design problems with the overall architecture. It could be a system defect. It could be lack of proper data. It could be data not coming from the right source. It could be lack of interconnections. We don't really know. Until we investigate, we usually don't know the root cause. So it's hidden. And for us to really address the pain points once and for all, we want to really tackle the root cause. Maybe it could be eliminated, maybe it could be resolved, maybe the underlying system could be fixed, upgraded, changed. So we really want to listen to pain points, but then try and discover root causes. How do we do that? Quite a few techniques. Now we will talk about just two today. The first one is called the 5 whys method. So it's a very, very famous method. It's used everywhere. It's been used for many, many years. And what in essence it is if you have a problem, someone stated a problem to you, you start with a problem statement and then you ask why 5 times, maybe more than 5. You ask why as many times as needed until you get to the root cause of the problem. So, we don't have enough inventory to fulfill all the orders. Why? Our suppliers are slow at delivering inventory recently. Why are they slow at delivery? Well, our suppliers are saying that they have some supply chain issues and now they need more lead time. And you can keep asking why and why until you get to root cause and maybe multiple root causes of the problems. So that's one approach of looking at it. Another approach, and you always have to keep in mind that as a business analyst, if you start asking why, you may end up with multiple causes, right? Especially if you have a complex business problem, often it has more than one cause. So one of the handy techniques to use is called a fishbone diagram or Ishikawa diagram. And this diagram helps you capture multiple causes of the problem. So in my case, I have here an example. My problem is inaccurate customer addresses in the system. And fishbone diagram looks like this. This is a head, is a problem, and then I have a skeleton and then the bones. And each of those bones, like the primary ones, corresponds to one of the areas, such as equipment, process, people, materials, environment, and measurement. And as the group doing root cause analysis comes up with different causes of the problems, you can assign it to each of these categories. And then you can determine, for example, what's the problem with the process? Invalid address correction. Why are we having problems with invalid address correction? Because we don't have any address check process, or because we don't even detect invalid addresses. So you keep adding primary, secondary, and tertiary root causes by asking why until you get to the point where you think, okay, this is it. And you may end up with multiple problems, and then you will start to define what has the highest priority. Which of these causes can you tackle, and maybe in what order to help you solve for the main problem. Maybe you can't tackle all of them, but you can highlight the main ones. So just keep in mind that our root cause analysis may discover multiple causes that combined create this problem. If you are, by the way, interested in this and in root cause diagrams, root cause analysis, check out on my website, y-change.com shop. I have some templates, I have some downloads that can help you with that, including a little template for a root cause, for a fishbone diagram. The next technique we'll talk about is process analysis, and you will have to do it. You can't avoid working and analyzing processes if you're a business analyst, because everything that business does revolves around processes, right? So the problem you're solving or the project you're working in may deal with one or even multiple processes that you need to optimize, analyze, modify, automate, etc. How do you do that? You always start with identifying what is it you're dealing with. Identify and name these processes. then you want to understand how processes work. And part of it you will start doing during your discovery, and then you continue during analysis phase. So maybe you'll do some immersion job shadowing, reviewing these procedures and diagrams, asking more questions, modeling processes. As you start modeling processes, creating process flows, it will help you ask more questions and understand even better how processes work. So these 3 steps will lead you to analyzing inefficiencies. What is not going right? What is not working well? What are the challenges that this process is facing? And that's how you identify areas for improvement. And this is where your requirements for process changes come from. So your required process changes are based on all of this analysis. The reason we need to do all of this analysis is that processes don't stay stable. Processes often deteriorate with time. They get more messy. The process may have started like this when it was designed in theory, or maybe it looks like that in your diagram and in your standard operating procedure. But if you do your immersion, or if you ask enough questions, if you start looking at artifacts, you may discover that in practice your process looks a little bit more like this. It gets messy. We have new steps added. We have some workarounds. And it will be for very often valid business reasons. Maybe a certain data that was needed for this step is actually missing. Or maybe the responsibilities of the departments have changed and now you cannot do this step anymore. You have to go and ask another department and they have a different way of dealing with it. Maybe the data that you've been using has changed and now instead of going to a very slow system, you keep a copy of the data in a spreadsheet. And it may not be a good practice, but this is what you may discover. So you will discover various fuzzy changes to the real processes, and you need to understand why and what, and without it you will not really be able to move forward. So this leads me to this again. Another learning point from today's webinar is whenever you analyze processes, or whenever one of your goals is stated as automating a process, remember you cannot just automate process without first improving and optimizing it. And this is crucial, because if you just automate the process as is, when it looks like this, you're just gonna get this forever. So we always want to improve, optimize, and only then automate. And without a lot of talking, I just want to leave you with a quote from Bill Gates. Automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency. Automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. So always think about it when you are asked to automate the process, and make sure you first make your operation more efficient, then you automate it. So improving and optimizing processes, how do you do that? This is a whole big discipline of business process improvement and business process optimization, and you can research it. We can't go into this too deep, but I'll give you just a few bullet points to keep in mind. As you learn more about processes, as you analyze them, you want to uncover bottlenecks and issues. What slows things down? You want to look for handovers that can be avoided. Maybe too many times the activities go from one department to another with slowdown. Are there some sequenced activities that can be parallel? Are there some too many loops and branches and decision points, and it's hard to follow, and they are creating a little bit a messy process of decision making? Are there sequences of steps that keep being replicated in multiple places by multiple roles of people, and is it really necessary? Can you simplify it? So these are just some of the ideas for you. Again, I do have another video called Process Analysis. The link will be in the description. Check it out if you would like to learn more about process analysis and process improvement. We will move on now to modeling, one of my favorite business analysis techniques. Business modeling is about creating visuals, presenting information visually. And here I want to quote Walt Disney. Maybe he wasn't a business analyst, but he worked with pictures. And what he said was, of all our inventions for mass communication, pictures still speak the most universally understood language. And this is true about business analysis models as well, because pictures, diagrams, models help to complement other ways of presenting information. They help us illustrate, they help us present something in a simplified way. And a lot of people, actually majority of people, are very visual, and diagrams help them. They help them to understand, and it helps you to share information with them. So what do we model? We can model structure, components, objects, relationships, and you can create diagrams like context models or conceptual data models to show the structure and relationships of things. We can also model behavior, actions of people, actions of systems, various changes. And here we can create process flows, use case diagrams, state charts, etc. So lots of diagrams. I will give you just a couple of examples, but what I want to also give you today is remind you of 3 C's of modeling, how to make those models quality and work well for you. These 3 C's are clarity, consistency, and conciseness. This is how you make your diagrams easy to understand and, as accurate as possible and not misleading. So what do these 3 concepts mean? Clarity, consistency, and conciseness. If you go to my blog, why-change.com blog, right here you will find a whole section on modeling and presenting, and that explains these 3 concepts in detail with examples. I'll also post descriptions in the video link. Now, how to create business models. Again, there are so many books and videos and channels that give you step-by-step instructions. You can find some of them on my channel as well on the Pictures Speak playlist, how to create a conceptual data model, context model, use case diagram, decision tree. Check them out. They give you a very, very practical tips on how to create these diagrams, and it will just make you more confident, which means it will be easier for you to use them. So models are your friends. Make sure you complement whatever you do with diagrams as appropriate. And finally, to wrap up today's webinar, we want to talk about structure, about packaging requirements. Requirements need structure. As we collect them, as we define them, we cannot have them lying down as a pile of bricks and then you go through that pile to figure out what you have and what you don't have. That just doesn't work. What we want instead is we want to see the structure. We want to see the vision of that future solution. So we want to structure the requirements instead of piling them up. If I want to build this tower, my requirements need to kind of reflect its structure. I want to understand what type of bricks I need, what type of other materials I need, how will I need to put them together, what will hold it all. And if I just have this pile of bricks, imagine just backlog of user stories thrown in, and it looks like a lot of user stories, but they're just piled in. You don't know what you have and what you don't have. You don't know whether they all align or whether there are any contradictions. And it's just not enough for you. So you want to structure your requirements. Maybe if you're doing following a user story format, you want to structure them with themes and epics. If you use business requirements documents, having sections, subsections with proper typos, determining requirement types, thinking of user journeys, of use cases, and then linking groups of requirements to those, thinking of scenarios, identifying business rules. So there's many methods of you to add structure to your requirements. Please do that. Don't pile them up like this, because it may look like you've done a lot of work, but you will never know when you're done and whether you're done and what is missing. We will wrap up today with reviewing what are the tools for capturing and sharing requirements. We just talked about techniques. Now, what tools you may need to use. You may use requirements management tools, and often it depends on whether the company you work for has those tools deployed. But if they do, definitely learn how to use them, and they will help you structure your requirements as well. And this is what is often used, for example, for managing user backlogs. Word processing software, of course, you'll never get away from it, so better learn how to use it efficiently, because we can never get away from documents. Spreadsheet software, we will use forever. From business analysis perspective, think about anything you will need to do in a tabular way. For example, you may capture a scenario matrix, a decision table, a data dictionary, maybe even a glossary of terms sometimes is captured this way with various filters. So there is many groups of information where spreadsheets come in handy for capturing them, and it can become one of your many requirements artifacts. Diagramming and modeling tools, of course. How do we create those diagrams? I use some of those tools in my videos. You may know of some others. There's lots of them on the market, but make sure you are proficient or knowledgeable about at least a couple of those modeling tools. Wireframe tools, if you need to create wireframes. Data analysis tools, again, starting from Excel and going into various dashboarding platforms. We do need to learn more about data analysis, and I also have a separate video called What Business Analysts Need to Know About Data. Presentation software. Business analysts need to present, they need to create decks, especially when you communicate with executive sponsors. So again, knowing how to use them efficiently comes in handy and saves you time. Collaboration and communication tools, especially in the last couple of years, became so foundational to all of our remote work. And even going forward, whether you go back to the office or not, you need to know how to use video conferencing and virtual collaboration tools, and do video recordings, and share diagrams online, and do screen shares online, and organize efficient meetings with people who are in different time zones, and how to communicate and share information effectively, whether you use Teams, Slack, SharePoint, or anything else. So this is crucial for sharing requirements. Mind mapping tools, you would use them often during discovery phase. We didn't talk much about mind mapping today, but it's another way to collect initial information and to help you get started. And finally, don't forget the low-tech stuff. Pen, paper, markers, sticky notes, whiteboards. When you go back to the office, put those stickies on a flip chart. It all works. Of course, there are many more resources for you as we need to wrap up the video. Check out other books, blogs, professional associations websites, and you will find more resources for you to learn about other business analysis tools and techniques. Never stop learning. If you do want to learn more about some specific business analysis skills, check out my website, courses.ychange.com. There are some courses and video lessons recorded here that you can enroll in, and also check out some of the downloads and handouts if you are interested through my website. Thank you for taking this time to watch the video. I hope it was well spent. I hope you will stay with YChange channel for other videos that will help you become a better analyst, develop your business analyst mindset, or if you're managing organizations or teams, help you to foster the BA mindset in your organizations. Thank you so much, and until next time, bye-bye.